At the heart of every Mario Kart is its chaotic list of items, and while plenty are made up for the series, or based on Mario enemies, many come from Mario's extensive legacy of power-ups in the mainline series. But not enough. So what if a Mario Kart added all of them? How would they function? That's what I want to discuss here today. But first, a few rules. 1. I will only be tackling Mario power-ups, so none from Wario Land, Yoshi's Island, or any other branch of the series. 2. This hypothetical Mario Kart contains every item that's previously been in the series, so I can't double up on a function an existing item already has. Lastly, I'll be splitting the power-ups into 4 categories based on their function: attack, defense, traversal, and mixed. In the description, you can find the list of power-ups I consulted for the video. But for now, how about we start with the attack items? Baby Yoshi. Well, Baby Yoshi is more of an item you hold rather than a power-up. I chose it over its older counterpart, since the latter is already a driver, not that the games haven't doubled up before. Regardless, this one was pretty simple. Baby Yoshi can eat nearby drivers and pop them out as an egg that takes a second to hatch. And, taking more inspiration from the mainline games, eating enough players within the time limit gives a small coin bonus as well, Blue Shell. But isn't there already? No, that's the spiny shell. Not that anyone, including me, calls it that. Still, the blue shell is one of my favourite power-ups from the 2D games. But how can it be distinguished from the existing shell items? Well, what if it completely ignored a track's off-road, only bouncing between the edges of the drivable area, making it potentially harder to avoid, with a possible downside of it being a bit slower than others? Bubble Flower. Shoot out bubbles that last a little bit, keeping any racers that make contact stuck in place for a few moments. Buzzy Shell. Works almost exactly like a green shell, except, much like the blue shell, it would be a bit slower and wouldn't immediately break upon hitting a driver, while in general, lasting a little bit longer. Cannon Box. An auto-firing cannon based on where the user is facing, ending on a much larger shot. Cappy. While I'd love Cappy as a racer, he undeniably has a lot of potential as an item, with my idea being that chucking him at a racer causes their controls to be inverted for a time, since Cappy would be possessing them. Drill Mushroom. Drill into the ground for an extended amount of time, avoiding the wrath of any items, before eventually springing out of the ground for a little boost. Elephant Fruit. Any enemy drivers in front get thrown behind by a trunk at the front of the cart. Flood. Another 3D companion, and one with a pretty obvious function, allowing the user to spray players in front, pushing them away and potentially off the track, rather than hurting them. Giga Bell. This would basically be a fusion of the Mega Mushroom and another power-up that'll come up soon, turning the user giant while allowing them to swipe in front of them, though it wouldn't last quite as long as the Mega Mushroom itself. Gold Flower. Shoot a barrage of gold fireballs that give coins upon contact with another driver, the item functioning more like Double Dash's fire item, being one shotgun attack rather than the fire flower's multiple uses, just to add a bit more variation. Goomba's Shoot. Bounce up and down as you drive, creating shockwaves that can knock back nearby players, while lasting shorter than the Mega Mushroom. Hammer Suit. This is one of the primary examples of a power-up that basically already exists in the game. But regardless, it is defined as a separate power-up from the regular hammer, so let's give it a purpose. In contrast to Mario Kart World's current hammer item, the hammer suit would allow the user to throw many more hammers before running out. However, these hammers would ditch the lingering effect of the current ones and be a bit smaller. Lakitu's Cloud. Turn into a cloud that spawns spinies behind the user, remaining on the track for a little while before despawning. Lightbox. Flashbang other drivers in front, making them briefly unable to see the track or any other HUD elements. Lucky Bell. The user can perform swipe attacks in front, and these attacks will then materialise as stone statues, performing the same action behind the user. Master Sword. Here's the first of a surprisingly wide amount of Super Mario Maker power-ups, and one I refuse to balance, since I can imagine it being a pretty rare item if it were in the game. The Master Sword auto strikes immediately in front of them, with said strikes sending bolts along the track if the user is maxed on coins. If the item button is pressed, the user will instead perform a spin slash, striking at every side near the user. And if we really wanted to make this overpowered, the back of the cart could also have a Hylian shield that makes the user invincible while the item is active. Power Balloon. This would act as a landmine on the track, contact with which would blow the driver backwards a short distance. Red POW block. Taking some inspiration from Mario Kart Wii's Thundercloud, an item most hate, but I kind of love for its uniqueness. The red POW block would basically be a game of hot potato, with each driver needing to press the item button in time to send it to another driver before it finally unleashes and stuns the last driver it's sent to. Maybe each successful smack of it would also give the driver a small boost, just to give it a bit more use. Spin drill. Like the drill mushroom, but the user could drill multiple times, though each would last much shorter than the single dig of the drill mushroom. Statue leaf. This would be an alternative version of the super leaf item from Mario Kart 7, swinging around the cart, but lasting shorter than its regular version, while creating stone statues behind. Super ball flower. Like the regular fire flower, but slower, and every time it hits a wall or driver, it splits into more fireballs, before eventually fizzling out. Super bell. This is one of the few cases where going alphabetical makes things a tad awkward, since I've already discussed two upgraded versions of this very item. Regardless, the Super Bell would allow the user to strike forwards at other players, while lasting longer than its other versions. Super Crown. This would turn the user into Peachette, and just Peachette. Taking some inspiration from Peach's final smash, Peachette would have a spotlight on her while she sings a lullaby, putting nearby players to sleep, unable to change direction for a short while. Vanish Cap. This would be sent to a random driver, making their character, HUD elements, and items invisible for a short time. And that's about it for the attack items. Some certainly have more unique abilities than others, but overall, I'm happy with what I came up with. But for now, let's move on to the defensive items. 64 DS caps. I've decided to turn all the 64 DS caps into one single item, giving us the mysterious cap. An item that when activated would change every player in front to a character cart combination that's the complete opposite of the current loadout. Bee Mushroom transforms part of the track behind the user to be mostly sticky, drastically slowing oncoming drivers. Boo Mushroom. I honestly really struggled with this one, considering we already have the Boo item, and I also came up with an idea for another invisibility power up that we'll get to later. Eventually, I decided to take some more direct inspiration from the behaviour of boos from the games, and how they can't move when the player looks at them. So what if, while transformed into a boo, the user scares off nearby drivers, so that they aren't looking at them, forcing them out of the user's way? Mechanically, this would basically just act as a wall that pushes nearby drivers away, potentially needing to take a less direct line on the track. Double Cherry. Upon activation, multiple identical clones of the user would appear on the track, along with any items they're holding, with each clone disappearing upon contact. Dry Bones Shell. Allows the user to travel on any liquid, while also acting as a shield that takes a couple of hits to fully break, basically acting as a slightly less powerful star, with no speed boost. Goomba Mask. Donning the mask spawns a stack of, let's say, 9 other Goombas on the user's head. Clicking the item button will release one of these Goombas onto the track to get in the way of other drivers, but if the user is hit even once, the entire stack is gone. Thus, the player would need to decide if they want to spread out the Goombas to cover more ground, or release as many as possible before they potentially get hit. Ice Skate. Like the Bee Mushroom, the Ice Skate would change the terrain behind the user to slow down other drivers, in this case being a super slidey icy surface. Mini Mushroom. Those familiar with the original Super Mario Kart will know that the Poison Mushroom already fulfills the most obvious effect a Mini Mushroom could have, that being shrinking another driver. But while the Mini Mushroom isn't exactly a beloved power-up, with some questioning if it even deserves that classification in the first place, ultimately, it does provide a power to the player, so why not represent it a bit more positively in Mario Kart? My idea is that, much like the star, the Mini Mushroom would increase the top speed of the user's vehicle, and while their short size would make them more vulnerable to being squished, perhaps targeting items, like the red shell, wouldn't be able to detect them at their shrunken size. Super Hammer. This would have slightly different functions, depending on which direction it's used in. When sent backwards, the hammer would create a pillar made of construction blocks to get in the way of oncoming players. Meanwhile, when used forwards, a small ramp would be created that would last a few seconds before falling apart. Super Pickaxe. When activated, much like its source material, the pickaxe would automatically dig the ground until time runs out, the uneven road causing other racers to spin out if they try going across it. Tanuki suit. Like the Super Leaf, the user can swing a tail around the cart, except here, similar to the Super Crown, every tail swing would cause nearby players to turn to stone for a few seconds, though the player would get far fewer tail swings before time runs out, compared to the Super Leaf. And that's all for defense. A few of these ended up being quite similar to one another, often causing some kind of hazard behind the user. But to be fair, I didn't want to just do a bunch of shields, since Mario Kart already has plenty of ways to block attacks already. Now onto a slightly bigger section, Traversal. Boost Star. This would make every drift boost stage come out faster, as well as adding an additional level of charging beyond the purple for a limited time. Bullet Bill Mask. The power of a bullet bill, but in multiple, smaller increments. Let's say it can be used 4 times. Carrot, a horizontal alternative to the feather, hovering over the ground for longer, yet not reaching nearly as high as the feather. Cloud Flower, taking some inspiration from F-Zero 99. This would take you to a cloud platform, just beyond the track, free from all the chaos for a short time. Coin Rush Star. The coin counter would be set to the usual max, while spawning more coins around the user to go beyond that limit until time runs out. Frog Suit. As long as the driver ahead is within reach, this would allow the user to jump on their head and choose when to leap off, which would also enact a small boost. If the user takes too long to leap off, or the driver below is hit by an item, they will be bounced backwards off the driver instead, creating a risk versus reward element of finding the right time to jump. I considered giving this function to Cappy instead, but I just found the image of a frog cart jumping on another player way more appealing. Gold Block. In contrast to the existing coin block, this would only allow one smack and would grant a random amount of coins. Mystery Mushroom. In Mario Maker, the Mystery Mushroom makes Mario look like another character, and while I could have done something with changing appearances here, I decided to go for my first idea. This would work like a regular mushroom, except the number of times it could boost you would be random, maybe a 1 out of 6 dice roll. Pow Pow. I considered not even including this one, and not just because I don't like the game it comes from, but because it didn't seem like it lent itself to an interesting Mario Kart item. In the game, it acts as a shield of 8-bit Marios around the player, and sure, there's a certain charm to that, but mechanically, it's really boring. Instead, and this is probably the most out there, not at all sensible idea of the video, but what if this item took the player to a 2D 8-bit version of the track they're on, being able to jump over items, and maybe collect coins that are otherwise inaccessible on the track. While the player's vision would be 2D, they would still appear on the track to the other drivers, though I imagine they'd be driving in simple straight lines, with there being some kind of visual showing that the driver is currently using the Pow Pow. A bit much for Mario Kart? Probably, but I think it could be fun. Penguin Suit. This would create a small icy path along the track, with the user speeding up as long as they stay within the narrow space, with it disappearing the moment the player grazes out of it. Propeller Box. This would propel the user in a straight line once, being unable to turn until the boost ends. Propeller Mushroom. Like the box, but this would propel the user multiple times, though it wouldn't be quite as great a distance. Spring Mushroom. Like a mushroom boost, except it reactivates if you manage to bump into another player during it. Super Flower Pot. Creates those branch and vine paths from Mario Kart World. Players from behind would also be able to traverse it, but it would disappear the moment the user either runs out of time or deactivates it themselves. Weird Mushroom. Multiple mushroom boosts, but each one would travel a varied amount of distance, from barely anything to a super boost, with a chance to boost backwards instead, because why not? Wonder Flower. This would make the track easier, but just for the user, meaning shortcuts that no longer require a mushroom, boost pads all around, no enemies, etc. And that's it for the second to last section, and probably my favourite group of the bunch. Pretty happy with most of these ideas, but now on to the final section, the mixed items. Baby Luma. Gives the user the power to spin, pull in nearby coins and drivers to the user, while also being able to give another driver a smack, though its range is less than the Super Leafs. And, like Galaxy, oncoming items like shells can be obtained by the user if they spin at the right time. Big Mushroom. A combination of the Mega Mushroom and a regular mushroom, simply turning the user big during the duration of the boost. Metal Cap. Turns every item the user obtains within, let's say a few minutes, into stronger metal alternatives that stun the target for longer. Power Flower. Slightly cheating with this one, the idea being that using it creates a stronger version of the last item used. Like if you use the green shell, you'd get triple greens or a red shell. But more importantly, this manages to check off a few of the outlier power-ups, such as the Invincibility Bell Leaf and Mushroom, along with the P-Wing and P-Acorn, all of which would act as slightly better versions of their depowered counterparts. Then there's the power-ups that aren't technically better versions, but I'm including them anyway, for the sake of simplicity. That being the Mega Star, which would be a power-up version of both the Star and Mega Mushroom. The Red Star, which would be an upgraded version of the Baby Luma, and the Wing Cap, which would be an upgraded version of the Feather. Rainbow Star, somehow a distinct power-up from the Power Star, courtesy of the Galaxy games. Like the Power Star, this would make the user invincible for a short time, but in this case, the period would be a bit more flexible, going up as long as you grab coins, items, perform tricks, hit players, etc. Basically a more active star that would be way less useful in flat areas or away from other players. Rock Mushroom. You would turn into a big rolling rock, and anytime you managed to squish another player, you'd get faster. So a bit similar to what I came up with for the Spring Mushroom, but functioning a bit differently. Super Mario Bros. 2 Mushroom. This would allow you to pull up random items from the ground, but each item would need to be flung before you can pull out another, as well as there being an overall time limit, at which point the last held item would remain in the item slot. Super Acorn. Finally, this would allow you quick dashes forward in the air, harming any players in the way, and that's every power-up turned into a Mario Kart item, the hypothetical game containing all of them undoubtedly being a balancing nightmare. But regardless, this was a fun thought experiment. I'd say my favourites were the Baby Luma, Spring Mushroom, Frog Suit, Boost Star, Super Hammer, Goomba Mask and Blue Shell, as they all felt pretty unique, while still feeling like they could fit in with the rest of the items. But that's all for now.